Welcome along to the 10-day trends. We may be in meteorological winter, but if you're here in the hope of some snow action, you're going to be disappointed. There's still plenty to get our teeth into, and there'll still be plenty falling from the sky, but it is mostly going to be rainfall. Let's have a look way up in the sky, though. First of all, the big picture and where the jet stream is. Interestingly, to the east of the UK, the jet stream is in a north-south orientation, which is quite interesting, as we'll see shortly. But out in the Atlantic, very much east-west. And, well, piggybacking on top of this jet stream, low pressure system, the jet stream pushing low pressure after low pressure after low pressure our way. That's what's going to provide the outbreaks of rain. Spinning up certain areas. One moves through Friday and into Saturday. Then another one appears for Saturday and into Sunday. And then down to the south, another one then spins its way up. And this has the potential to be quite a potent area of low pressure. One thing that has definitely changed with the jet stream, you'll have noticed in the next 4 or 5 days it's going to shift further south. What that means, as it spins up this area of low pressure, it's drawing up some warmer air. So it's got more energy, this low. It's got a bit more about it, as well as that intensification. It's also likely to be packing a bit more rainfall because warmer air can hold more moisture. Okay, let's rewind the clock and just want to bring your attention to what's going on to the east of the UK. As I mentioned, to start off with the jet stream in that north-south orientation, but to the east of the UK, the jet stream remains fairly weak. And here's why that's significant, because we're kind of at the end of this push of the jet stream, which means the low pressure systems are kind of grinding to a halt across the UK. They're not whizzing through and speeding off into Europe because there's nothing to push them along here. They're all kind of grinding to a halt close to the UK, which means they're dropping more rainfall. They're not whizzing through, and that rainfall will continue to build up. So that is as I said, the main thing we need to concern ourselves with over the next 10 days, really, because it looks pretty wet and the ground is very, very soggy indeed. First set of weather fronts moving through during Thursday, actually developing little lows along this occluded front. That's going to slow the progress of the rain down on Thursday, may drag its heels across eastern areas. Certainly a dull, damp start. Should brighten up in many places with some sunny spells and a few showers moving through. But then it turns quite cold. We do have a bit of a window with some clearer skies Thursday night and into Friday. So whilst a lot of the chat in this 10-day trend is going to be of rainfall and how mild it's going to be, it is going to be quite cold on Friday morning. A hint of blue on the chart there, frost across eastern areas, and that is some potentially quite dense patches of fog forming across East Anglia and the southeast. So we do need to watch out for that on Friday morning. Behind me, though, the next weather system is waiting in the wings. That's first developing low that's getting spun up by the jet stream. Notice the tightly packed isobars, so a spell of wet and windy weather to move through during Friday. That low still providing plenty of showers on Saturday. There is a bit of a bump in the isobars here. That could offer a bit of a respite Saturday night and into Sunday before that next low comes in. Again, those tangle of weather fronts providing persistent rain moving through and some heavy bursts as well before we look down to the southwest and that low we highlighted earlier intensifying for Monday. But let's get through the weekend first of all, well, Friday and the weekend. This is the 24-hour rainfall totals as they build up through Friday and into Saturday. So from 1 o'clock Friday to 1 o'clock Saturday, the rainfall totals we're looking at. You can pick out the hills there, southwest England, the moors, particularly South Wales, a very sensitive area to rainfall at the moment, likely to see 30 to 40 millimetres of rainfall. But areas further north as well, hills of North Wales, notice the peaks of yellows there. We could see as much as 50 millimetres of rain. One of the wettest parts of the country into the weekend during Saturday, like to be eastern parts of Scotland. Again, over the high ground, more than 50 millimetres of rain likely here. So those are the areas likely to see the heaviest rain during Friday and into Saturday. And then to Sunday, we'll see another band of rain moving through. Because it's been so wet, the rainfall, particularly in western areas, likely to cause some problems as we go through the weekend. But in parts of the east, we are still running at a rainfall deficit, of course, because it's been one of those years. Now, as we run through Sunday nights, that weather system should start to pull away, but then eyes drawn down to the southwest. As we saw earlier, this low pressure system intensifying, bringing with it some warmer air and bringing with it plenty of moisture as well. Now, at the moment, it looks like it's going to develop and gain its intensity well away from the UK. That's when it's at its most potent in terms of its wind strength, as it really develops and intensifies. But that looks like happening way out in the Atlantic. But there's this kind of lead time. 5 days away, always going to be a little bit of uncertainty. Now, the computer models are kind of agreeing. If I show you the European model for the same time frame, it's got a pretty similar story with low pressure systems out here, and there's that one that's developing and quite intense. Whilst the overall pattern is similar, just how quickly this low develops and where it spins up and intensifies, well, there's going to be a bit of uncertainty about that 5 days ahead. And I can show you that using this plot, putting the Met Office model back on, but the oranges and the reds highlighting the difference between the European model and the Met Office model. You can see in this zone here, that's where the biggest difference is. The darker the orangey red, the bigger the difference. So there's the biggest differences close to this area of low pressure for Monday and into Tuesday. So that is, as I say, one area we need to watch, but both the models, in fact most of the main computer models we look at, all showing something similar with this low. Quite intense, quite deep, spreading its way up towards the west of the UK, packing with it some gusty winds and also, yes, more rainfall. And coming up from the southwest, it's going to be the southwestern quarter of the UK that bears the brunt of that heavy rain as we head into the new working week. And we're probably not done there with rainfall either. Looking into next week, this is the probability plot where we kind of pigeonhole the different pressure patterns into groups of what the flavour of the weather may be. And notice the pale blues. Those of you hoping for cold air, no, that's not frosts, that's low pressure systems. The palest blue of all, low pressure tracking across the south of the UK. That's the most likely scenario into the early part of next week. Other of the blues take over. But they're similar weather patterns as well. Southwesterly winds dominated by low pressure. Interestingly, even though we've got low pressure sitting across the UK through the weekend, the most likely pressure pattern is still classified as high pressure, Scandinavian high. And that's going back to what we talked about earlier with that active jet stream across the UK. But as we go to the east of the UK, higher pressure is dominating across Scandinavia, blocking those weather systems coming in. That's why they're grinding to a halt across the UK. So even though we've got a Scandinavian high set up and high pressure across Scandinavia, which can extend and bring the UK colder and dry weather, it isn't on this occasion because we've got those low pressures moving in. So even that overall pressure pattern is with a Scandinavian high. It doesn't always mean that we see dry weather, and in this case, far from it. But certainly through next week, we'll like to see low pressure continuing to dominate, and that is shown quite clearly here on the most probable pressure patterns, the first, the most likely, the second most likely, and the third most likely, all kind of showing the same thing. They're all very similar, with low pressure sitting somewhere to the west of the UK. And it's very similar even as we head through Wednesday and Thursday. Add up all those percentages, over 40%, that it's going to be something similar to this. Low pressure sitting somewhere to the west of the UK. The blue on the chart here, that's rainfall anomaly. So the difference from usual for this time of year. It's not where necessarily it's going to rain, it's where we're going to see more rain than usual. You can see it's always picking out western or southwestern parts of the UK for each of these scenarios, really. Even into Thursday, the third most likely scenario there has low pressure sitting to the south, but the other two still sitting out to the west of the UK, and even Friday, still very similar. The most likely pressure pattern, again, with low sitting somewhere to the south or the west of the UK, 30% chance over a week away. That is quite a high percentage chance. And you add on these other two as well, which are pretty similar, over 50% chance that is what we're going to see. So that is quite a high probability that low pressure is going to dominate, sitting out somewhere to the west of the UK. That generates winds coming up from the southwest. It means the rainfall is focused across the south and the west. And it also means it's going to be pretty mild. The winds coming in from a relatively mild Atlantic, not going to provide us with any really cold air. And that's what this graph is showing, the ensemble run from the European model ECMWF. When we run the model many times, each of these black lines is representing the temperature from each of those ensemble members, each of those model runs. Now you get the variation day and night going forward, so you get that oscillation between day and night, but you also get overall that pattern of things being pretty mild. Now this is for London. If you drew a line through the average, you'd be looking at what, 10, 11 degrees, probably something like that. Does show that dip Thursday night into Friday morning. It will be quite cold, and we will get that dip. But even the coldest ensemble members, even beyond next week and into the following, very few of them are showing temperatures getting down even at night close to freezing, and those daytime highs somewhere, I say, close to double figures. So it's likely to stay very mild even into the following weekend. And if I show you Edinburgh, it's also showing something very similar. Again, get that dip Thursday night and into Friday. But generally, the temperatures are rising, still with that day-night oscillation. And even as things get pretty messy and it's really hard to predict into the following weekend, even then, some of the coldest members, even some of the coldest ensembles, barely getting much below freezing. So no real sign of anything too cold. Generally, certainly through next week, it's going to be on the mild side across all parts of the UK, both by day and by night. As always, do keep up to date with the forecast from the Met Office. Best way to do that, of course, follow us on social media. And if you haven't done already, you really want to be subscribing to our YouTube channel.